my name is Beverly Whalen. I'm from the Art Barn, and I'm going to begin a series of lessons called Prepared to Paint with a question mark. If you're like me, before I sit down to paint, I'd really like to know what I'm doing. So, in the next 4 lessons, I'm going to give you some pointers, give you some basics. This is set up for a beginning painting course to gradually work our way up to the point where we feel confident painting our own works, not just copying someone else's, but we will learn from the works of others. Now, the first lesson today I'm going to start with is called Brushwork Essentials. Before you paint, you want to know your brushes. You want to know them well, and you want to know what they do, how they will perform for you on the canvas or paper or board, if you choose that. You want to know the result. There's several different kinds of brushes, and I will, in fact, there's so many, I don't think I could name them all. I'm going to limit this discussion to some beginner brushes, basic brushes that I think everyone could use. And I'm going to categorize them into 3 groups: small, medium, and large. The small ones I have labeled, and I want to show those to you without getting too crazy with this phone here. I hope you can see it. Okay, now, do you see those? I've labeled them liner number 2, round number 2, fan brush, it's the smallest one I have here. Then there's an angled edge brush, and there's an edge brush, these are all small, square brush, which if you look at the end of this, you'll see that it's not just an edge brush, but there's a couple of layers there, so that it's more like a rectangle or a square. Then we have what we call a filbert brush. I will go over the cleaning of the brushes in a minute, but if you expand this up, you will see several medium-sized brushes too. Same types of brushes, just in a bigger size. And then over here you see the large brushes. Same types of brushes, just in a larger size. Today I'm going to take the smaller brushes, the ones I have labeled, and I'm going to demonstrate what each of them can do with acrylic paints. Now, we could do this with oils, we could do this with watercolors. You might use some different paintbrushes for watercolors. These will be either synthetic, sable, or bristle brushes. I do have some pig hair brushes, but they are preserved for very special times. So they are a little bit rougher, more bristly. I'm going to put the phone back, and I'm going to grab the liner number 2 and demonstrate how that works on my canvas. Okay, now, I know, this is my first time working with this light and phone combo, so please be patient with me. Thanks. Now I'm going to turn this so that the canvas is shown and the light should be shining on it so that you can see the canvas and what I'm going to do. Maybe it needs to be a little further away. I already did some on this side of the canvas. Now we're going to go to this side of the canvas so that you can see that. Okay. Can you see that? Maybe I need to put it up a little bit more. Try that. Now, I've got my black acrylic paint that we're going to work with today. And my glass of water. Where did it go? There it is. I'm going to take my liner brush, dip it in some water, and then I'm going to dip it in some of my black paint, but I'm going to roll the brush. You could see that on an easel, not an easel, palette. Let me show that to you on a palette. Okay. If you place your paint on a palette, this is a clear palette, and then take the point of your liner brush and roll it. Put it over here just in case you didn't see that. And roll it, then it comes to a fine point. You don't want blobs of paint. You just want it to be loaded with paint. Roll it in the paint, and then you come out with a fine point. Now, we're going to make some lines. You can make all sorts of lines with a liner brush. You can do outlines. You can do small detail work. Think of an eye. Suppose you're making that. You can do the outline of the eye. Do the pupil, the iris. Then you could do eyelashes on the top or the bottom. You can get a lot of detail work done with this liner brush. Now I'm going to rinse this brush. When you're using acrylic paint, be mindful that it dries quickly, and you never want to let your brush sit in the water. If you let it sit in the water, then that water will go up into the ferrule. The ferrule is this part of the brush that holds the bristles. And if it sets in that water, then the water will ruin the glue that's in the ferrule that holds the bristles. So you want to prevent that by rinsing out your brush with water and then laying it flat. At the end of your time, your session, then you just want to lay your brush flat for now. Rinse it good first. And then at the end of the session, you can wash your brushes with soap and water. Now I'm going to take the next brush in line, which is a round number 2. It's one of my smallest round brushes. I'm going to put some paint on my palette here. You treat a round brush much like you do a liner. You would roll in order to keep the bristles in one mass. Now that doesn't mean you couldn't use it differently. You could use it with stippling, and you could use the end of the brush. But I often use a round brush for curved lines, and they're easier to do when that round brush is in one mass together. So you don't want any blobs. You want to work your paint together, and then try it out. I'm just going to make some round marks. Nice. Some you can get thicker or thin depending on if you're close or if you're far away. Now, if you're close, that's when you usually do your detail work. If you're far away and you're doing brush work, long-handled brushes, maybe further from the phone here, you would be able to do brush work from a distance, and you would have a better view actually that way. I save my detail for last. When you're blocking in color, You can use bigger brushes, and you can use brushes with longer handles, stand farther away, and be able to accomplish much more with your view. So that's a round brush. I'm going to rinse it out. I'm just going to lay it flat till it dries, or till I have a chance to wash it out again. Now we're going to look at a brush not everybody uses, but I learned about this brush from Bob Ross. I like it, and I love using it. So I'm going to show you how I use the fan brush. This is a small fan brush. If I take that black paint, and I'm not stippling it, I'm not bruising the hairs. I'm going from the side just to make sure it's loaded well. Now I'm going to make a pine tree with it. You can use this for all sorts of landscape items if you're doing a landscape. Let's do a pine tree. You could do the stem, or the, not stem, the trunk first, and then go back and put in, just use the corner of your fan brush, and then a little bit more as you go down, making it wider. Of course, pine trees are all sorts of different kinds of pine trees. Some of the branches go downwards, some go up, some go straight across. I'm going to do downward here. And you see how you can easily use that fan brush for doing a pine tree. I'm also going to do some grass underneath it to give it stability there. It always comes to life when you have some sort of background with an item. Now I'm going to rinse out this brush. Rinse it out well. Now when your water gets dirty, it's time to change it. For this demonstration, it's black paint, and so my water is going to look muddy. Won't be too bad though, just demonstrating 7 brushes. The next brush I'm going to demonstrate is the edge brush. Angled edge, angled edge. So if you look at the palette here, I'm using the edges of the angle brush, filling them up, and then I'm going to place them to make a geometric figure. I could make a square, of course. Now that's kind of crooked. I could make or a rectangle. I could make a trapezoid. Think of geometric figures when you're thinking of painting, because usually when you're blocking in paint first, before all the detail work, it's going to be a geometric figure that you're thinking of. Try to diffuse it into some sort of geometric figure to make sense out of it. So that's your angle brush. You can do all sorts of things with an angle brush. How about a mountain? Beautiful silhouette mountain you could do. Up the mountain crooked, and then down the mountain wide. You could use both sides of the brush. What's a fun thing to do is just do it over and over again. Now I want you to notice the hills and valleys. This is a canvas that I'm painting on. The top part of that canvas I call the hills, and the lower weave of the canvas I would call the valleys. When your brush is not real loaded and maybe not wet, completely wet, then you're going to get more of a dry brush effect, and you're going to see those hills and valleys. If you load your brush, I'm going to load that a little bit more, add a little bit of water, then you're going to see, I'm going to go over one of these so you can see the difference. See how it soaks into those valleys and it goes deeper? That's what happens when your paint is wetter or more wet. So whenever you want to, now if you're doing it on a board, you're going to have a whole different effect. If that board is covered with gesso, if the board is rough, or if it's smooth. That's why it's very good to experiment with your brushes before you start and to know how they're going to attach to whatever base that you choose. I'm going to wash the angled brush, put it away. That was an angled edge brush. And I'm going to pull out a regular size edge brush, except this is small. And if you see that flat edge, it's wonderful for making objects, geometric shapes, edges. Well, one thing you'll find with painting, the edges are very important. Edges, how they go up against each other, whether that edge is straight, whether it's crooked, whether it's round. Edges are very important. That's why they created so many neat brushes for that purpose. Let's pretend like there's an outline of a log cabin. First we have a triangle. Let's make that come to a point. Now with the angled edge brush, that would have been a little bit easier. I put a little bit of water on this. Make it straight across. And you have the top of a log cabin. There's just a silhouette of it. Now let's make a square underneath the triangle. And what you have is the front of the log cabin. I'm going to load the brush again. Put it there. Of course, if you were doing this not as a silhouette, you would use color. You would use detail. But we're just going to pretend. Now that would be a front view. If you were painting from a different perspective, maybe you would see a side view of that log cabin, and then you would use your wonderful perspective skills. Something like this. You would bring down the roof. These lines would stay parallel, and you have a roof there. You can make that object with your edge brush very easily, then come back and add detail if it wasn't a silhouette. Then your strokes are going to make a difference too. Whether your strokes go sideways or whether they go up and down makes a big difference in the outcome of what you paint. So you want to practice that a little bit. Okay, I'm going to rinse that brush. And I'm going to go to a square brush. The square brush is a little thicker than the edge brush. It's got a little bit more fullness to it. Maybe a larger object would be a good thing to do. I'm gonna, let's do some petals to a flower. Use it kind of like an edge brush, but you're going to have more fullness. And really, it's a great brush to fill in area with. Fill in the area of whatever you're painting. But you can, suppose you needed to put a dot in here. Or for the middle of the flower, put a round. Didn't take me long with this brush because it's very full. It can load heavily, and you can get a lot of paint on the canvas with it at one time. So let's put that one away, wash it. Let it lay flat. And I'm going to go to a filbert. This is a filbert. I better get some more paint on my palette. Whoa, okay. Okay, now I want you to notice the thing about this brush is that it has rounded edges. It's great for making circles, great for cheeks, muscles, any type of curved line. The filbert works wonderful. So let's try, I've done a little bit of experimenting here. Let's make just some curvy lines. This is thicker. The hills and the valleys are filled in. This is thinner. You get more of a dry brush look. Let me add a little bit of water to that paint and we'll do it again. Now, those are the 7 brushes I wanted to demonstrate, and those are the 7 main brushes that I use when I'm painting. Now, besides brushwork, let me go over the washing process with you. I'm going to take these brushes right here, all of them that I just used, and we're going to do a washing. Now, it's important that you pay attention here, or you could buy some really good brushes and ruin them just in a setting. Acrylic paints dry so easily. So I'm going to take the camera with me. We're going to go to the sink. Whoa. Here we go. Oh, by the way, we're at the art barn. I told you that, didn't I? Here's some of the things I've been working on. My sign for outside that hangs underneath. This is the one I'm doing for my competition soon. Can you see that? This one I entered in YWCA competition. Here's one that I'm going to enter by January 15th. It's a Bryn Drew mansion near Columbus that is having a competition. Prize money is up there, and it only costs $30 to enter. Now, we're walking towards the sink, so I'm going to come around here. Lights are off, trying to keep the glare. Do you see the paintings up on the shelves? That's my new door to the bathroom, so you don't have to go outside to the bathroom. And here we go. Now, I want to show you how can I set this phone so you can see. Let me try it by the